Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sara Gonzales. Apparently, this is the show that no one wants to be on because it's myself, Stu, and Jason Buttrill.
Do we have an option to not be on the show? Because I was not told.
No, you did not have an option. No one else apparently wanted to join us. I heard, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but there were a couple people who were like, "Oh, is Stu going to be on?" Yeah.
Well, if you didn't want to hurt my feelings, why would you tell me that? I don't even understand.
I considered not hurting your feelings, and then I was like, I'd rather be honest. I'm a very honest person. So, Stu, top story.
Van Jones and Glenn Beck appearing at the same event.
I'm sorry?
This is the world we live in, apparently.
Is it a pay-per-view event?
It is. It's to the death.
Jason, top story for you.
If you're going to propose gun legislation, you should probably know how guns work and what it takes to buy them.
That's a minor detail. Yes, that's not how our laws
I might
work.
just be asking for a little bit too much.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for it.
Obviously, a lot to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Riduzone. So, I sit here and I blab on about how, hey, I used to be fat and now I'm not fat anymore.
I've noticed that. You've said that. You've been blabbing a lot.
Right. I blab about it all the time. And I keep saying we've got viewers who are taking it and it's working for them. It can work for you. And I just want to read. I got a message. I got some feedback from one of our viewers. And I don't want to say his name because I didn't tell him I was going to be reading this. But he said, just wanted to give you feedback on Riduzone. I've been using it for about 2 weeks. It really works. We were in a diner on Sunday and they had this delicious pie there. And he said, I was able to resist the urge and I'm losing weight. So we've got a lot of viewers. I get tons of these messages all the time. It's working for people. It can work for you if you've got weight to lose or if you're just trying to maintain like me and you're just constantly, you've got all of these temptations in front of you or you've got people who you might work with who are constantly talking about unhealthy food. Not naming any names. Not naming any names. Try Riduzone. Go to riduzone.com. Use promo code THEBLAZE. You can get 30% off of a 3-month supply. And let me just tell you, it's worth it. We did the math. $1.39 a day. I am pretty sure you can afford that if you are trying to lose the weight and nothing is working. Riduzone.com. All right, Stu, Van Jones and Glenn Beck to the death.
Not to the death, actually. Same event, though, and this is one of the very rare events where it makes more sense to invite Glenn Beck than anybody, even Van Jones. Glenn is going to be talking tomorrow. He has a speech at CPAC. And today, Van Jones spoke at CPAC. That's a really weird thing to say. Now, CPAC, in case you don't know, is the Conservative Political Action Conference, right? So it is an event where conservatives generally go. Now, I will say, CPAC occasionally branches out a bit from the what I would call a traditional conservative. Some of the guests they've had over the past couple of years, I have not been particularly excited about. But I'm glad to see Glenn back there. But Van Jones, why would Van Jones be at CPAC? Well, he's there because of criminal justice reform. Obviously, Donald Trump signed this into law. And was passed with bipartisan support to reform the criminal justice system, shorten prison sentences, do a bunch of different things. So here he is talking at CPAC, and there's some really interesting things about Van Jones that you learn from something like this. Watch.
Here's the deal. The conservative movement in this country, unfortunately from my point of view, is now the leader on this issue of reform, in that you look at Mississippi, a rock-ribbed, totally conservative, former jailer is the governor there, Governor Bryant. Governor Bryant has cut the prison population and crime at the same time. Deal in Georgia cut the prison population and crime at the same time. Rick Perry cut the prison population, prison expenditures, and crime at the same time. Ohio, South Carolina, what you're seeing now are Republican governors being tough on the dollars, tough on crime, and shrinking prison populations, and showing the rest of the country that it can be done. Now, my problem is I now have a conservative movement that, for libertarian reasons, for Christian conservative reasons, and for fiscally conservative reasons, is actually doing a great job on what should be my issue. This is supposed to be my issue. You are stealing my issue.
It's an interesting clip because, a lot of things he's talking about are right, like the governors of those states are doing a good job with this particular issue. But Van Jones is a fascinating character. I mean, if you would have told me back in 2009 that Van Jones would be at CPAC the day before Glenn Beck is speaking, I would have never in a million years believed you. And there's a couple things you notice. First of all, when Van Jones first kind of came into our life back in these days, and this is before you do find people were with us. This was like, we looked at him, we looked at his background, and I remember going through the stuff and just like, this guy's bad news. I mean, he did a lot of stuff that was really, really rough, and I didn't understand how they would put him in an administration. This guy who called himself in a publication a communist. I mean, like, this was not like we weren't making this stuff up. He was had all sorts of issues with protests and running these organizations that did very shady things and questionable things as they were trying to protest their various issues. He was selling T-shirts that said Bush doesn't care about black people, and it was all. I mean, the guy was an extremist. I mean, and that's what we were pointing out. And I remember thinking, like, well, how did this guy get himself to an administration? How does he get himself in front of all these big businessmen? He was going through and hobnobbing with some of the biggest CEOs in America. How does a guy with that background get there? You see it. He's affable. He's likable. He is engaging. He is also incredibly willing to give credit to others. You watch his approach there. It is. I mean, he doesn't need to go to CPAC and give. Look. If you had Van Jones in a quiet moment, I don't know that he actually believes those things. Like, I'm sure he thinks that those are they're doing a decent job. But I mean, I'm sure he really, in his heart, believes that the Democrats are better at this issue than Republicans are. But he's smart enough to go up there in front of that crowd and say, who's doing a good job for this issue? You guys. Yeah. And he gives all the credit to conservatives and takes no credit for himself. He kind of downplays himself and takes shots at himself and says, you guys are owning my issue and blah, 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 blah. He's really engaging and smart. That's how he had that sort of meteoric rise to get into the White House before kind of all came crashing down. There is, I would say, a lot to learn from Van Jones in that moment, in that, Glenn has been talking about, he recently went back and read How to Make Friends and Influence People.
I was just about to say the same thing.
And that is exactly what that book says. It says, think not about what you want to say or what you want done. Think about the person who you're talking to and what they want done, and try to push your agenda while, itching that scratch, right? Like scratching that itch, right, for that person. And that is what he does, and he's smart to do it that way. That's how he got this done. Criminal justice reform is an issue that I think most people agree with on principle. The devil is in the details, and there's a lot of people, some at Conservative Review have pointed out real serious issues with the particular proposal that was passed. However, I think in general, we all agree that, it would be good if we can get these, we want prison sentences to be aligned so that they're not punishing, one very similar crime to another. Crack and cocaine are the two most obvious examples where, the prison sentences would be 3 and 4 times as long. But the issue as a whole is kind of separate from what you see there from Van Jones. Do we do enough of that stuff? Are we going in front of, at times, like I've said this before, it's like we did this with the emergency thing this week. I mean, Democrats are the one that proposed it. In reality, do I think they care at all about stopping presidential power over something like this? No, they want it more than anything. But they were the ones who proposed it, and I would have voted for that limitation this week.
My biggest fear on this is what you pointed out. He doesn't really. He probably didn't want to do this. He has nothing to. I can't think about what he. This doesn't help his reputation at all.
No.
He has no reason at all to do this.
I disagree with that. I think he does. His reason for doing this is making this an issue. He really legitimately cares about this issue.
About it, yeah.
And I think he sees a real path to get it done because he cares about the issue. And that's what's been so wrong with the past few years, is that Republicans no longer care about the issue. They only care about winning. Like, winning for what? It's like, if you really want something done, sometimes the right thing to do is to, right now is a perfect example. We talked about this with Mike Lee just the other day. Mike Lee came out about the Emergency Declaration Act and didn't say, well, we should absolutely support Trump, or no, we shouldn't support Trump. He said we should use this as an opportunity to take power back to the Congress. Because Mike Lee cares about that principle. And this is a point. You're never going to get Democrats to agree to that except right now. And if Republicans cared about that principle of taking power away from the executive, putting it back where the Constitution says it's supposed to be, that's the type of thing they could actually get done right now. Same sort of blame for Democrats with Trump, where Trump likes that approach that Van Jones is giving them. If they would have came to him with a $1 trillion infrastructure plan and heaped the credit on Trump, God only knows how many bridges we'd be building right now. You know, that if you can suck it up with your ego, which is what Van Jones is doing here, you can actually make advantages on the issue. And because he actually cares about that issue a lot, it's really what he thinks as his life's work. You can make some real inroads. You don't think he really believes the issue?
Pardon my how skeptical I am.
It's fair to be skeptical of Van Jones.
Because I just see him as the ultimate, I see him as chameleon in a human's body. So I think he will say anything for his own advantage. That's when I say it's hard for me to see what he gets off of this, because maybe he really does believe in criminal justice reform. It seems like he does, but he's basically just being the cheerleader for something that's already happening. Like the tide is already moving, the wind's already blowing in that direction. As he was pointing out, there's all these governors
on it in the past.
He's part of the reason why it's blowing in that direction, though, I think.
Right. So it's not like he's just latching onto a movement that he had nothing to do with before, and now all of a sudden he's like, hey, I really care about this. Great
sure,
job, guys.
But it's already something in process. So I see it happening. So I don't see the benefit for him to sit around with a bunch of conservatives and be their cheerleader. I'm like, what are you getting off of this?
So you think he has some sort of ulterior motive?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not exactly sure what it is. That completely bewildered me right there.
That's a weird clip.
It's like sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, but not in this case at all with Van Jones. I'm like, what? Well, I think do you mean by that?
I think that because I frankly don't believe what he was just saying. I mean, I think you're right. There is a secondary motive here. I think the secondary motive, though, for him is to make conservatives feel like they're winning that issue, so they keep doing it. And because it's well received, Trump gets great press out of it every time he does anything like this. That if he knows if he can get Republicans on the side of that issue, the Democrats are easy. He can bring them along on anything that Republicans pass. And I think he sees this as a real a way to operate in the world of an opposition government. He's smart because the same type of thing. That's why, with these issues, when you have the Democrats will line up to do anything to stop Trump's power right now. They will vote, I think, for almost anything that makes Trump have less power, because most of them are very short-sighted, and they're thinking to themselves, well, right now we got to stop Trump. That's what our voters want. Well, if we instead thought a little bit more like Van Jones is, and I know it's crazy to say, and said, hey, you know what? Democrats, you're right. We do need to stop that executive power, and started taking, trade is a great one. Republicans are supposed to be free traders. Why not take that power back now when it's the only time you're going to get any Democrats to vote for it?
You could be right, and I wish politics worked like that right now, to where it's kind of like you look at it like never Trumpers are ridiculous, because you have to be able to point out that he does some good things. Tax reform was good. There's been some good things that have happened.
Tax reform was
okay. Regularman okay on that.
Fine, right.
If it goes Bush tax plan.
If it goes down, it's good. You know what I mean? If it's not going up, I'm happy.
Right.
There could definitely is room for more. But there's been things that have been good. Rolling back regulations, stuff like that has been good.
There's been a bunch of stuff.
Israel. There's been a bunch of stuff. But they kind of just pretend. Never Trumpers will just pretend that that none of that happened, and won't even really talk about it. It's the same for the absolute pro-Trump people. They refuse to call out things that when he does bad. That's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, you should be able to judge him by his
and it goes the same in a more broad terms from Republican Democrats. We used to be able to do that. That was when we were more centrally aligned. You could have people like a JFK or something like that. There's no way he would be a Democrat today. There's absolutely no way he'd be a Republican.
I want to say last thing. There's no way we would have had prescription drug reform unless the Democrats did it with 60 seats in the Senate. They did it instead when Bush was president, because Bush was like, well, I can sell this to enough of my people to launch a brand new giant entitlement. And Republicans wound up voting for it. there's a real opportunity if what your end game are principles, if there are things that you actually want that are policies and principles, you can actually get things done under the opposition party. You just have to think of how to appeal to them to give them credit for it. So often though, that's not the case. The idea is only to stay in power. And so people, we see this all over the Republican Party right now because they will agree with anything kind of Trump says because they know they're going to be in trouble. The Democrats, there's enough of that going on as well. If you actually come up with a few principles you care about, you can go after them in an opposition party. It's not a wasteland, and Van Jones has proved that. Give him credit strategically. He's a smart guy, and he's able to kind of think of the Trump era. For Democrats is like the worst thing that's ever happened in the universe, and this guy got his top priority passed in the middle of it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty amazing achievement, and it should probably be noted.
Back in a minute. I'm shocked at CNN.
Yeah. Big thing.
Before we jump back into it, I want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. We here at BlazeTV, are especially thankful for Relief Factor because it makes Glenn tolerable to work with. I think you guys would agree with that.
Tolerable is probably too far, but it's improved.
Better.
It's improved.
Yeah.
Ish. But in all seriousness, he was in a tremendous amount of pain for a number of years. He tried Relief Factor. It works for him. I was in a car accident back in 2013, and I completely messed up my back. That's the official diagnosis.
Yeah, messed up back.
Completely messed up my back, and nothing worked for me either. I tried acupuncture. I tried drugs. I tried massage. I tried all of it. And I just thought that I had to live in constant pain also. Turns out you don't actually have to live in constant pain. Yeah, it's shocking, right?
It's amazing.
What was that? Do you remember the number of people you guys talked about that just live in
Oh,
pain?
yeah. It was something like, I think it was 2/3 of people who suffer in pain just have given up and don't even try to do anything else anymore.
Just live
years,
with it.
This is what my life is. And I think it was 1/3 of people still are suffering from injuries from high school, like in sports and everything.
That's insane.
It's a really high number.
Yes, it doesn't have to be that way. Try Relief Factor. If you get the 3-week quick start pack for $19.95, 70% of the people who try it go on to keep buying it. I would say that the odds are in your favor that it's going to work for you. Try it and see. It's worth $20. Go to relieffactor.com. All right, Jason, the gun control bill.
This, every time I hear the left talk about guns, and even some people on the right talk about guns, and it's clear they have no friggin' clue what they're talking about, nothing irritates me more. Like this issue, nothing irritates me more. I grew up around guns. I've got like an arsenal at my house. Military, everything. It's just
live look at Jason's.
That's it right there. Yeah, that's part of the front door actually. But lately you've seen more and more ridiculous stuff come out of this. But now, before I get to what just happened in Congress, there's a few tweets from this Brianna Wu chick that she's running for Congress, I believe, in Massachusetts or Maine. What's MA? I always get those mixed up. That's Massachusetts. So she's running for Congress in
Asked on
2020.
a television show, what's MA?
I was
You're
get those mixed
fired,
up.
Jason.
And I just, he not only did it, he did it in the middle of a segment. He was complaining about someone else not knowing what they were talking about. That's amazing.
And
Thank you, Chief Researcher
asked.
Jason Buttrill.
Brianna didn't even ask. She just tweeted it. So anyway, she starts off talking about how she had the opportunity to fire a fully automatic M16 assault rifle today under professional instructions. This is the same weapon U.S. Armed Forces use. I'm not going to read the rest of that because this is ridiculous. She's talking about an already banned gun that has no bearing whatsoever in the legislation that's going through the House right now. Those guns are banned. You can only get that if you're in the military. So, moving on. She said,
very limited exceptions. I mean, like certain dealers can have them, right? When it comes to fully automatic weapons, at least, I know there are some dealers that can have them under special licenses. Some people have automatic weapons, correct?
like the older weapons that were grandfathered in, like pre-ban.
Yeah, pre-85, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But you can't just go,
86.
but you're not, they're ridiculously expensive
And
because
very
there's a
hard to
limited
come by,
amount. Very hard to come by. The average Joe is not going down to Walmart.
Oh, no, it's impossible.
Picking
to
up
get
a
at
fully
Walmart.
automatic M16.
Right, like, you know, if you ever go to Vegas, they have the signs all over the place. They're like, come fire in a fully automatic weapon.
Yeah.
And, like, I guess, like, you know, they have whatever license they need to have.
That's so worth it, by the way.
Every time I'm there, I want to do it. And I never pulled the trigger on it. Next time I'm going.
So and then she continues on. So for Stars Grove and South, I took an NRA safety class, blah, blah, blah. But this assault rifle is a different beast. It would take a minimum 30 to 40 hours of professional instruction. But you're not going to get one as a private citizen under most circumstances. You're not going to.
Yeah.
Now, this is what probably cracked me up the most, and I'm just going to end on this third tweet because you don't need to go further after this. She's talking about the M16. It shoots a 5.56 millimeter bullet. You can feel the wind of it firing 3 feet behind the shooter. The gun is very difficult to control. Girl, shut up. Shut up. She's describing a 50 caliber rifle right now, not a 5.56. It's basically a glorified 22, pretty much. Yeah. It's basically one step up from the 22. And there's literally no kick whatsoever. My wife, I took her to shoot because for home defense, took her to shoot a shotgun. We went through all the different shotgun ranges, and then she didn't feel comfortable with any of those. I gave her my M4, my M16 style rifle, AR-15. She shot that, had no issues whatsoever. There is no kick. There's no like scream of wind coming past your face if the round is anywhere near you. This is absolutely ignorant.
Was she standing in front of the gun, like, and it was just missing her, like the bullets? Or
she said there's a stream of air that goes backwards or something like that.
Is that
the only thing I can think of? Is the gas discharge? Maybe has nothing to do with the round. It's just that's how the bolt goes back and forth. It's because of the gas discharge. Maybe, I don't know. She clearly has no idea what she's talking about. And this is the types of people that are voting on some of this legislation. They just passed this bill in the House. It's now going to go to the Senate, which hopefully it dies in the Senate. But they just passed it unanimously in the House. And this is pretty much their universal background check law. All the articles are just infuriating for me to read because it's like, it's finally cutting out the gun show loophole. And what was the other one? It was the gun show loophole and was it private? No, not private sales. There was two loopholes that it said that it cut out. Mm-hmm. First of all, the gun show loophole is completely ridiculous. You cannot. Oh, internet sales. That's the other one. They said they cut that loophole. Challenge any Democrat, if you're watching this right now, go to a gun show and videotape it. Go to every single booth in any gun show and try to buy a gun. You're going to do a background check.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
There's no gun show.
You can't do it. It is against the law. Go buy any gun on any seller online, and you have to do a background check. They don't just like send a gun straight to your house. It goes to a licensed seller.
Guns to go, gunsexpress.com.
Right.
Just ship it to you, 2-day shipping.
Doesn't happen that way.
On Prime.
So try right now. Try a fully automatic M16. First try that and then get the laughs. And then try just a regular AR-15. It's not going to you. It's going to a licensed seller. You have to go to the licensed seller. They won't even give it to you unless you do a background check. This stuff is utterly ridiculous. The only thing that they have any kind of argument whatsoever or something that they could point to as an actual real thing is private sales. Mm-hmm. Private sales are kind of funky.
Such a tiny amount of percentage of the actual total sales in the United States. But yes, I mean, like you can sell if you're a private owner, not dealer, but a private owner. You have like a couple of guns. You want to sell one of them to someone else.
that could be a private transaction. It's difficult to argue against it. And, while you might think pragmatically it's not a good idea, we have something called the Second Amendment that says you can't infringe on this process. So it's difficult for me to understand how any of this crap is constitutional. I mean, you mentioned the M16 fully automatic weapon. You're right, it is illegal currently. I do think that's also unconstitutional.
Absolutely unconstitutional.
I want to take a break, and then when we go into overtime, I'd like to ask you guys a couple questions about a loophole that I feel exists and kind of get your thoughts on that in overtime. Back in a minute.
Sara Gonzales loophole. Oh, my God. I think every Democrat's going to be saying the Sara Gonzales loophole.
If you have not already signed up, you are going to miss the overtime conversation we are about to have. We're not done talking. We talk all day.
That's all we do.
All day long. That's all we do
All we
is
do.
talk, and you're missing it. So if you have not yet, go to BlazeTV.com, use promo code NEWS, and you'll get $10 off of your subscription. And it's all available. It's also available on the podcast. So make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast, obviously give us 5 stars because we're amazing and awesome and you love us. And for those of you who are on Blaze TV or podcast, we will see you in overtime next.
They're pretty lovable, I found.
I feel.